all of them tried to spin me into a Russian propagandist. CNN had never lied to me before. So why did they start lying today? It's absurd at this point. It's not even news. It is literally, it's like watching a snuff film. I don't know how recognizable I am, but I will tell you, if you'd ever like me to go undercover, there's nothing I would love more.
Welcome to Project Veritas Conversations. My name is James O'Keefe, and my guest is Brandon Straka, the founder of the Walk Away campaign. I hope you enjoy it. Brandon, why don't you tell Project Veritas's audience how you got started?
Yeah, well, first of all, I was not even a very particularly political guy starting off. I mean, I was somebody who I called myself sort of a Democrat by default. I was a lifelong liberal. And in every major election, I would certainly vote Democrats, oftentimes even thoughtlessly, just sort of, I would go and check the box next to anything that had a D next to it because, I very much bought into sort of the liberal media narrative of, what Republicans are and what Democrats are, which is to say that Republicans are all racist, bigots, homophobes, monsters, neo-Nazis, et cetera. And that the Democrats are the people of the working class, the party that's looking out for marginalized classes of people in this country. And as a gay man, they really stoked, I think, that sense of fear and the manipulation and the exploitation of fear going into the 2016 election. Everything was very, very amped up. And I was a big Hillary supporter at the time. And so you have that combined with the fact that Donald Trump, according to the media, is the world's, second coming of Hitler, biggest racist ever. And but that same media also kept telling me that he had like a 3% chance of winning or less. So although Hitler was running for office again, I wasn't really that worried about it because they kept saying that there was no chance he would win. So then on election day, when of course we got this huge shock and this surprise, I was a combination of terrified, confused, angry, resentful. And I went on this quest to try to understand how it happened. Number one, how did it happen? And number two, how did the media that I trusted get it so wrong? And so for several months, I just was asking these questions constantly on social media. So I knew that a lot of people I grew up with, people I went to high school with, et cetera, probably voted for Trump. And I knew that was going to happen, but I'd already kind of pre-forgiven them because, again, he wasn't going to win. So why not just let them pass? But now he had one, and I really wanted to understand it. And the more that people would not answer me, the more enraged I was becoming. And so finally in January of 2017, right around the time he was about to take office, I posted on Facebook that I would never be able to understand how anyone could vote for a man who was capable of standing before a cheering crowd and mocking a reporter's disability. What the hell is wrong with you guys? What has happened to the soul and the conscience of middle America? And finally, somebody answered me for the first time. A woman who was actually my babysitter when I was a baby reached out to me privately. She was afraid to have this conversation publicly. And she said, listen, I'm not trying to start a fight with you. I'm just asking, have you seen this? And she sent me a link to a YouTube video entitled Debunking That Trump Mocked the Disabled Reporter. And when I first saw just the title, I was sort of incensed. I was just like, oh God, this is more right-wing propaganda, more Fox News brainwashing. And then I actually became kind of gleeful. And I was like, oh, I can't wait to watch this so I can tell her how stupid she is for falling for this propaganda. And so I watched the video. And for anyone who doesn't know, it's a compilation of footage of Donald Trump numerous times throughout the years, even long before he was running for president, doing that exact same voice and that exact same gesture as he did that day when he was accused of mocking a reporter's disability. But the commonality in every incident was that he was imitating somebody who was flailing because they were caught in a lie or they were doing something shady, they were doing something dishonest. And it blew my mind. I mean, I had this sort of disconnect between my brain and my heart because my brain started telling me, oh my God, I don't think that he mocked that reporter's disability. But my heart was saying, yeah, but we hate him, And it became just crystal clear to me, he did not mock that reporter's disability. But this presented an almost bigger conundrum for me because I thought, okay, well, if he didn't mock that reporter's disability, why did CNN tell me that he did? Because CNN had never lied to me before. So why did they start lying today?
Mm-hmm.
And so that sort of started my journey of research of trying to understand why the media would manipulate a moment or create a false narrative or context behind something that was intentionally designed to manipulate my fear, my anger, and my sense of security.
And
And
what compelled you to go public with this? Because I'm certain that there
I'm
are
sorry.
other people compelled you to go public with this. Because I'm certain there are other people who have been through what you are saying, but you bravely came forward and started this whole movement.
Well, when I sort of made this initial discovery, I started talking to fellow liberals and fellow Democrats, fellow New Yorkers, and just asking what they thought about what I had discovered. And what happened was I was instantly met with this enormous backlash and contempt. Now, as a liberal myself, I certainly was guilty numerous times of engaging in incredibly hostile, contemptuous rhetoric towards conservatives. But what was astounding to me was that just by simply asking a few innocent questions, I was now being treated by fellow liberals and friends, some people who had known me since I was a child. I'm now being treated exactly the same way as I and other liberals had treated conservatives just for asking innocent questions. And that really pissed me off because, you know, I thought, wow, there's absolutely no level of there's no loyalty, you know, from people who I've known for a long time. And so I started to see that. So what I did, it was sort of retreated within myself and started doing more research, more homework, asking more questions, watching more videos, reading more about the media. And what I found was absolutely astounding. And so when I had my mind completely opened up and also kind of completely blown by what I was discovering, I felt like there was no choice but to speak out about it. Again, particularly as a gay man, because one of the things I discovered was that if you are Black or brown or LGBT or a minority status person of any kind in this country, we are very intentionally and specifically being targeted by the media. We are being our sense of safety, security, and our fears are being exploited and manipulated to control the way that we feel, the way that we think, and ultimately the way that we vote. And I knew that I had to speak out and do something about that because I found it absolutely reprehensible.
Well, you said that you had no choice. It's a very interesting comment. A lot of the whistleblowers that we work with, they say that it's become a choiceless choice. For them, there was no other option. But truthfully, not all people feel compelled the way that you do. I mean, what is it about you as a person that led you to have this somewhat unique quality, which is to do it, which is to take the action, right? There is a choice. You could just be silent. You could go about your life and go about your business and not be the activist that you've become. So what do you think it was about you or your upbringing or in your DNA that led you to take this morally courageous path?
I think that it was a combination, a little bit of all of those things. I think that by nature, I've always been sort of outspoken. I've always been a rebel. I've always been somebody who stands up to authority and will ask questions and not just go with the flow. That's always been my nature. But on the other side of it too, and this this sounds really Pollyanna, and I hate myself for saying it, but I intrinsically have a desire to help people. Like, I don't like to see people suffer. I don't like bullies. I don't like watching people get pushed around. And so to me, it seemed like just the epitome of bullying to know that something as powerful as the media construct in this country is intentionally manipulating and scaring the hell out of people for their own political purposes, for their own political gain. I mean, wouldn't it be nice if Black people and white people could just get along in harmony and not have so much racial tension? Wouldn't it be nice if gay people and straight people weren't at odds with each other all the time? I mean, wouldn't life be a lot better if that were so? But I saw so clearly that much of what I always thought was the problem, which were conservatives. You know, I always thought, you know, conservatives are greedy, self-interested, straight white people who hate anybody who isn't also a greedy, self-interested, straight white person. But what I really saw happening was that it's not so much that, it's the media. It is the media constantly coming up with false narratives and taking moments out of context that are designed to confirm the biases of people, mostly on the left, and keep them suspended in a state of anger, fear, and confusion.
Well, the media is certainly a focus of I've been saying for years that it's more powerful than all three branches of government. Give us a couple, maybe one of the most powerful anecdotes about your experiences with the media. Like, what have you seen? Just tell us more, some of the worst experiences, some of the best experiences with the media. After the break, we'll hear more from Brandon Straka and his experiences with the mainstream media.
Compatible with news. I feel terrible. I feel like it's like the truth suffers. The voters are poorly informed. Our bosses don't see an upside in doing the job that we're supposed to do, which is to speak truth to power and hold people to account.
People in New York are constantly, I think, fascinated by how can people like Donald Trump? How can people understand? Well, cross the Hudson now and then and come out and spend some time, and you'll hear why.
A colleague of mine on Kobe Bryant and said that all of his daughters died in a helicopter crash. That was a he just fucked up and got bad information and reported bad information and has paid the price for it. He got suspended. But, I don't know. The fake news abounds. Like there are problems with the truth these days. We don't hold him to account. We also don't give him credit for what things he does do.
Mr. Tucker, I'm a reporter with Project Veritas. Do you have any comment on the president's threat to sue CNN as a result of the Project Veritas expose the last couple of weeks? Do you have any comment at all?
We're moving towards impeachment. Let's just stay very focused on impeachment.
What about allegations from Steve Bruss from employees at your network, sir?
Yeah, he already had been accused of things prior. Yeah.
Okay, what's his name?
Steve Bruss.
These are employees at your organization, sir, saying that you have a personal vendetta against Donald Trump.
Has a personal vendetta against Trump?
Now would be the time to comment. We've reached out to your PR people. Nobody said a word. Do you know who the higher-ups were that were protecting Steve Brusk?
Welcome back. Before the break, I asked Brandon Straka, the founder of the Walk Away campaign, about his experiences, good and bad, with the mainstream media. Here's what he had to say.
Well, so I can tell you that, I decided to start a movement, which I called the Walk Away campaign. And I launched it about 2 years ago with a video explaining all the reasons why I was walking away from liberalism in the Democratic Party. It's about a 6-minute video that went extremely viral. And it launched a movement that I called #WalkAwayCampaign. Encouraging other people who are feeling the same way I was feeling to make their video testimonials, to tell their stories, and to join us in a social media, what started as a social media movement. It gained enormous fire within the first couple of months, particularly that whole summer of 2018. There was just a mass explosion of literally hundreds of thousands of people who began joining. Tens of thousands of people began making video and written testimonials, telling their stories. And obviously, I was incredibly proud of what this became and that it became this so quickly. Well, we reached a point where, the liberal media could really no longer ignore us, because it just didn't even make sense anymore for them to not be talking about this thing that was happening. So what they did was, sources like CNN, MSNBC, the New York Times, BuzzFeed, Vice, the usual sources, all began running stories about Walkaway. But what they did, none of them, even to this day, 2 years later, none of them have ever reached out to me for a comment, for an interview. They ran these stories, and what they said was that this was a Russian propaganda campaign, something that was devised in the Kremlin, that all of these people that are using this hashtag and telling these stories, these are not real people, these are Russian bots. They blatantly ignored the video testimonials. Well, in some cases, actually, certain media sources said these were paid actors who are making videos. And then now I'm smart enough and savvy enough to understand better how they work and how they operate. And what I actually believe is that they are responsible for the launch of, back in 2018, a series of memes came out. And these memes were just, still images of people, a lot of them black people, with a quote above that said, "I walked away from the Democratic Party because ... hashtag walk away. Then they ran a story saying that all of these pictures and these memes were from Shutterstock and that these were not real people, not real. Well, these didn't come from my campaign. And I even did an interview with Snopes, which is incredibly left-leaning, but I tried to clear it up with them. I tried to clear it. I made it a proclamation immediately when this came out. These are not our memes. These memes do not come from the Walk Away campaign. This has nothing to do with us. And still to this day, when the liberal media are forced to do stories about Walk Away because of whatever reason, they'll continue the narrative. Russian propaganda campaign that released fake memes with Shutterstock images and paid actors who made fake testimonials. It's outrageous.
So you tried to reason with these reporters and it didn't get you anywhere? Pretty much, were you torched by all of them? Were you treated? Was there any good ones in the mainstream media, or were they all trying to spin you into a Russian propagandist?
All of them tried to spin me into a Russian propagandist.
So how do we fix, I mean, how, in your mind, how do we fix, I don't think there's any question the media is broken, everyone's listening to this, and we've got our own methods at Project Veritas, but how would you fix our media landscape? What is the solution to that problem?
They're only going to change when they completely lose their audience entirely, or lose enough of a portion of their audience that the bottom line no longer becomes worth it to them to continue on this narrative. I mean, if you take, for example, just Trump and the way, because sources like CNN or organizations like CNN, MSNBC, it is literally 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, Trump hatred. And almost they don't really talk about anything else. They don't really cover other stories. If something significant or relevant is happening in the world, they spin it through the lens of why Trump is responsible for this problem. And it's absurd at this point. It's not even news. It is literally, it's like watching a snuff film. It's like watching somebody just repeatedly try to kill somebody over and over again. And I think at this point, they have created a culture and an audience of addicts, people who Jones for that type of fix. They want to hate. They want to hate Trump. They don't want news. They don't care what's going on in the world. They just want their daily fix of hatred. And I think that until these people, but I used to be one of these people, bear this in mind. That was me. But what ended up being more important and relevant to me than I think the hatred addiction was knowing that I was being used, that I was being targeted, and that I was being manipulated by these very same people to control my thoughts and behavior. So we need to get more people to understand, look, not only are things not what they seem, that's important too, but you are being used, you are being manipulated. And no one will ever respond to the term brainwashing, but it is brainwashing.
People don't know that they're being, some people just don't know that what they're watching is not real, and you want them to walk away. How do you get them to wake up, so to speak? How do you shake them awake? What do you think the best strategy is to do that?
Well, there's a number of things that we're doing with the Walk Away campaign. We started as a social media movement. Now we're an actual organization that travels the country doing true boots on the ground activism, coast to coast. So one thing that we do are what we call the Walk Away town halls, traveling the country, getting into the Black community, the Hispanic community, the LGBT community, the Jewish community. And we're actually having events where, minority groups are voting Democrat and enormous voting blocks, 80, 90% at times. And we're kind of laying out all these facts, and we're laying out all of this information about how the media is manipulating them, how history in many cases has been completely contorted and twisted in the way that it's represented to people. That, I mean, there are people who think that, Abraham Lincoln was a Democrat, and that the Republicans are the party of slavery, and we have to correct a lot of these narratives for people. We've also created an educational video series called The Hard Truth. Each episode is about 5 minutes long. People can watch them on YouTube for free. They're just sitting there. We, a different speaker speaking on a different topic, from liberal media bias to racial issues to leftist talking points and myths that we're correcting. We put those out there as well. And I think the most powerful thing that Walk Away has is just the testimonials from real people. The more people that we get to walk away, and the more people who talk about their reasons for walking away, the more that other people feel less alone and more encouraged to be able to make that exact same choice. As I've said numerous times before, when people leave the left, they're not just walking away from a political ideology or political party. Many people are walking away from friends, from family, from job opportunities. It's like leaving a cult.
Right.
And so I think the more of a network and a community of support that we can put together for people to leave, the more people will feel free to make that choice.
And how are you being received in doing this? Have you witnessed people's minds change on the spot, or how does that work? When we get back, we'll hear more from Brandon Straka about the walk-away conversion experience.
I've had the story for 3 years. I've had this interview with Virginia Roberts. We would not put it on the air. First of all, I was told, who's Jeffrey Epstein? No one knows who that is. This is a stupid story. Then the palace found out that we had her whole allegations about Prince Andrew and threatened us a million different ways. We were so afraid we wouldn't be able to interview Kate and Will that also quashed the story. And then Alan Dershowitz was also implicated in it because of the planes. She told me everything. She had pictures. She had everything. She was in hiding for 12 years. We convinced her to come out. We convinced her to talk to us. It was unbelievable what we had. Clinton. We had everything. I tried for 3 years to get it on, to no avail, and now it's all coming out, and it's like these new revelations, and I freaking had all of it. I'm so pissed right now. Like, every day I get more and more pissed because I'm just like, oh my God, it was what we had was unreal. Other women backing it up. Hey, yep. Brad Edwards, the attorney, 3 years ago, saying there will come a day when we will realize Jeffrey Epstein was the most prolific pedophile this country has ever known. And I had it all 3 years ago.
I canvassed with someone who's like an anarchist, and I canvassed with someone who's more of a Marxist-Leninist, and so we do we attract radical, like truly radical people to the campaign. It's obviously not like outward-facing sort of.
Bernie has been out there standing on the picket lines and doing the uncomfortable stuff, and I absolutely think that he would endorse that kind of action. Sometimes that's what you got to do to get it done.
A lot of the stories we're told in the United States about, the gulags and the persecution of the kulaks and things like that are exaggerated. We certainly don't have a straight perspective on that stuff here in America. It's going to take, it's going to take militancy. But just like a militant labor movement that's willing to, one, strike, and if necessary, just destroy property and things like that.
Welcome back to my conversation with Walkaway campaign founder, Brandon Straka. And how are you being received in doing this? Have you witnessed people's minds change on the spot, or how does that work?
Absolutely, absolutely. I am blessed to have people message me on a daily basis on social media and tell me, I get it now. I just woke up. I either watched this video you guys put out, or I watched your town hall, or I connected the dots based off of this thing that you've been saying for months. Now, finally, I see it. We are absolutely having that result. And again, the testimonials, they're amazing. Almost every one of them goes viral. And if you look at the comments underneath, and we have every type of person who is doing this. So, you have 100, 200, 300 black people telling their stories about why they're walking away. Well, eventually other black people are going to be like, wait a minute, something's happening here. We've got something going on. And so, yeah, we absolutely are getting that feedback on a constant basis, not to mention that our numbers are going up every day, which is a really nice thing.
So you haven't gotten any calls from like Vanity Fair or, I don't know, People Magazine or anything like that, talking about this movement? No profiles from any mainstream media?
Well, there have been some profiles. They just say it's Russian propaganda.
Right.
But yeah, no, I mean, I'm very pleased that right now Cosmopolitan magazine, UK version, did reach out to me a few weeks ago. They're looking to run a story in June, and they're going to be featuring some of the women in my campaign who have walked away, which, perhaps I'm naive, perhaps I'm an idiot, but every time something like this happens, I go in with the best of hopes thinking, okay, hopefully they'll tell a truthful, legitimate, straightforward story about what's going on here. So I'm very hopeful about that story that's coming out. I have a podcast, and a while back I interviewed Roseanne Barr right around the time that she had gotten fired from her show.
Right.
And that went extremely viral. And we were in Vanity Fair and People and these various sources. They didn't talk much about Walkaway, but they just kind of kept the focus on Roseanne. So there's been a little bit of mention there, but no one has ever called me and said, hey, can I talk to you about your movement and do a straightforward story?
The more effective you are, the more they will cover you. What are the economics of Walkaway? Are you guys a 501c3 or how does that work?
Sure. So we are now a 501c3 organization, and we also have a super PAC. So we have two branches of the organization. One is overtly political, one is educational. And so depending on what our activity is that we're engaging in, one covers some and one covers the rest. And yeah, so that's how we that's our financial setup.
Do you have any big plans for? There's a huge presidential election coming up. Do you have any? What are your plans for the fall? What do your programs look like between September and November?
Well, as I'm sure everyone can identify with, we've been kind of devastated by the shutdown of everything. We had lots of events on the calendar that we had to cancel, which is devastating. But one thing that we so far are very resolute that we're going to move forward with is our October 3rd weekend in DC, which begins with the October 2nd American Women's Town Hall. My panel for that event is Laura Trump, Judge Jeanine Pirro, Diamond and Silk, Katie Hopkins, Shamika Michelle. So this is going to be kind of a major event that we're doing to counter liberalism for women, modern feminism, essentially, and give, I think, a more inspiring, uplifting message to women in this country that they can walk away. And then the next day is going to be the Unsilent Majority March on Washington. So we're going to do basically a massive demonstration in D.C. With a lot of incredible speakers. Maybe James O'Keefe will be there. That would be incredible. And so that's a major weekend that we're looking forward to. But in the meantime, we're also just trying to plow forward with digital content,
right.
Which for me personally is not as inspiring as getting out there and being face to face with the people. But we're doing what we can.
We talk a lot about the problems in the media. What about the problems in the conservative movement, right? What about? I mean, I can talk about my own experiences, but do you have any enlightening pieces of wisdom from how the conservative movement is broken or things it needs to do to improve?
Ooh, this could be a 3-part series.
Yeah,
I'll break it down to a few statements. Yeah, for sure. One of the major problems that we have in the conservative movement that I have faced firsthand, and a lot of people at my level have, when I say at my level, I mean a newcomer. I don't mean somebody, up at the top, is that there are people at the top who have been given an enormous amount of power, influence, and proximity to the administration. And I found that a lot of these people are incredibly protective of their position and actually don't wish to see other people rise up. So I have been the target and the victim many times of being having doors closed to events, being removed from events, being blacklisted by people in my own movement, because God forbid Brandon Straka or Walkaway should become a great success, and what a threat that might be to someone else's organization. And then I think a big problem that we have in the conservative movement too is the lack of ability to actually talk honestly about these things. Because one thing that I find really dismaying about conservatives is that they lose their minds when two high-profile conservatives have an argument or have discussion. It's stop fighting, the left is watching, it's call each other on the phone and work this out. And it's like, well, listen, a lot of people, I think, exploit and manipulate that very thing. There are bad players in our movement. There are people with bad intentions, and they know that people will not call them out on the things that they do, because conservative audience will get very upset if that happens. So they exploit that very thing. I actually think it's really healthy to let somebody have it occasionally on Twitter and call it out and say, hey, why did you blacklist me from that event? Why did you do that thing? Let's tell the truth.
The election is going to be a ballot election, mail-in ballots, they're saying. Any hot tips for Project Veritas on where we might want to go sleuthing? Any interesting ideas for what to expose in the fall with our undercover reporters?
Boy, wow, that sounds fun.
Everyone always asks me that question, where am I going next? So I'd like to ask you what you think.
Yeah. But I don't know how recognizable I am, but I will tell you, if you'd ever like me to go undercover, there's nothing I would love more. I would love to do a Project Veritas.
Maybe we'll take advantage of that and send you one of our covert cameras. Good to make your acquaintance. Good to see you.
Yeah, you too. Thank you for having me.